appreciating the hero's journey that we're all in. And, you know, it's like I said, you're not better or worse than other people. You may just be at a different stage in your journey. You know, you wouldn't compare, if you're comparing yourself to Luke Skywalker, for example. Do you compare yourself when he's like in a little mud hut and just not doing so well? Or do you compare yourself to when he's a Jedi Master?
Yeah.
It's the same dude.
So important.
So, yeah, so it's important. And I think a lot of people are comparing themselves in a mud hut to someone who's a Jedi Master.
Welcome back to the Quest for Greatness, where I'm on a mission to help you unleash your full potential. Today's guest is the former professional athlete, best-selling author, and host of the Awaken Your Alpha podcast, Adam Lewis Walker. After career-ending injury sidelined him from track and field, Adam had to rebuild his life and now spends his time helping other people seek mastery and lead their lives. So Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. I wouldn't say I was a professional athlete, a semi-pro, because to be track and field, there's so little money in athletics unless you are literally the number one in the country or a British record holder. Like my training partner was the British record holder, and he technically was semi-professional because he got so little funding. He had to still do part-time jobs. So yeah. I was definitely a semi-pro athlete in England, and I loved it. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks for pointing out. I think important point you're making here, right? Is like there in athletics, there's not much money, but I think still the level that you were at, right, was incredibly high. It was really one of the top guys in the country, and so to really create the context for this conversation, I first want to talk about, awakening your alpha, because that's a concept that probably none of my listeners have really heard about, contemplated before. So can you define, first of all, what that is?
Yeah, so in terms of the definition, if you look up alpha in the dictionary, it goes to Alpha Centauri, which is the star that shines the brightest. And then from the animal kingdom, it's to achieve the highest rank in a dominance hierarchy. So, and the example they give there is the alpha female of the elephant pack. So again, alpha, generally you always think male, and probably sometimes there's a bit of a negative slant on it sometimes, and a bit of a bully boy, aggressive. So awaken your alpha, my interpretation of that is to achieve the highest rank in areas of your life that are important to you. Again, not by society's standards, and then to shine as bright as you can with your time here. And that's not to put others into your shadow, but to illuminate. So that is kind of my framing, and that's what the whole focus and kind of the core thing. One of the first things I put in the book I wrote, Tales and Tactics to Thrive, Awaken Your Alpha, is because people are coming at it, and they can be, without looking into it, quite aggressive themselves in terms of the word alpha. So they're not fans of it. So, if you go back to what it truly means, I mean, what's not to like about star that shines the brightest and to achieve the highest rank?
Yes. No, I totally agree. Like alpha has, like, in general in the population, a very negative connotation, right? But I totally agree with you that, like, it's at the end of the day, like this aspect of shining the brightest. What's beautiful about that is you also give other people the opportunity and the possibility to shine brighter as well, right? So it's not like, sort of, Gary Vee has always, the super cool quote where he says, like, there's basically two ways to build the tallest building in town, right? One is like rip down everything else, every other building, or two, just build truly the tallest tower in town, right? Yes. And as a byproduct of that, you also enable everyone else to strive and to become better.
100%. It's the difference between, that scarcity mindset and abundance mindset. And, scarcity mindset and tearing other people down is, it by my definition and how I, my approach to it, is not alpha in the slightest. And there's also obviously definitely a feminine side to alpha. And as I say, that the philosophy of alpha is a mindset. It's not particularly, for me anyway, a male or female thing. Yes, I have a men's development podcast. But again, if we're talking about marketing, when I say alpha or awaken your alpha, what does 99% of the population instantly think? Because it is usually tied to a male thing. So, that's kind of what we're playing with here as well.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting. I think especially like this whole thing about, success, greatness, being an alpha is like, it's not this like winning at all cost mentality, right? It's not like trying to put other people down. It's actually trying to simply unleash your full potential. It's trying to become the best that you can possibly become. And like you say, an area that is defined by you. And I think that is
exactly.
such an important point.
You're talking about win at all costs. Well, in terms of areas that are important to you, lifestyle, free time, ability to spend quality time with friends, family, and have that freedom of your schedule. These are things that are important to me. They might not be important to you. So it's not about comparing yourself to other people. It's about doing the work. And in terms of, we actually only touched on the definition of awaken your alpha, but in terms of what that actually looks like in a practical sense, it comes down to awareness, action, and ascension. In terms of, you need to be aware of these things that we're just talking about and do the deep work to really make sure you're following what is truly important to you for the right reasons. And then also the actions. And then obviously we talked about building up ascension. It's not to necessarily rise above others, but it's about personal improvement and getting better every day. So it is a constant thing as well. So once you do that and are continuing to do that, you're always having that awareness and reassessing, is this genuinely where I want to go? And obviously once you get to certain aspects or achieve certain things, it's a different landscape. So you do need to continually reassess and take modified actions, or keep up the good work.
Yes. So tell me more about this awareness piece, because I find that like this ability to truly become aware and set intentions for our lives around all these different areas, right? Not just financial success and business, but really, like you say, like the happiness and the free time and the family time and all of this stuff. Like, what are sort of the big buckets that people should be aware of? And I know it's of course an individual thing, but what do you see usually like are the big buckets that really fulfill people?
Yeah. So in terms of like some of the process, what I'll talk about, I call it the 4 Ps: purpose, priorities, process, and actually, what's the last one? It's been a while. Perspective. Yes. So in the 4 Ps, so purpose, priorities, process, and perspective. So the purpose is, and what we touched on before, are you sure about what you're following? Because we all have, social expectations. Naturally, you're brought up, you generally go to school, you've got your friends and family around you. They will think certain things are awesome and certain things are not so awesome. Depending on where you're from, that could be, quite a weird kind of, environment to be around, or it could be a very positive environment, but it becomes your norm. So once you move away or you get older, there's sometimes a lot of baggage, and maybe you're following something that was kind of predetermined for you, or you kind of felt like you didn't have any choice. So it's really important to do that awareness of your purpose. Like, what is your Mount Olympus? What are you striving for and why? And ultimately getting that really clear on your mission, because a mission I believe it's important to have, not to not enjoy what you're doing currently or just always focusing on something ahead, but to make sure you're pointing generally the right direction. So then you can think about your actions. Do they move you towards your Mount Olympus, or help support your mission, or away from it? So that would kind of be around purpose and just appreciating the hero's journey that we're all in. And it's like I said, you're not better or worse than other people. You may just be at a different stage in your journey. You wouldn't compare, if you're comparing yourself to Luke Skywalker, for example. Do you compare yourself when he's like in a little mud hut and just not doing so well, or do you compare yourself to when he's a Jedi Master?
Yeah,
it's the same dude.
So important.
So it's important, and I think a lot of people are comparing themselves in a mud hut to someone who's a Jedi Master. Or it's just different timings and different. I'm assuming they're at a different age to you, and again, it may be a different age in terms of the pursuit of their mission. They may be older than you, but they may have only been really going after what they love for about a year or so. So it's, it's very important to, take it with a pinch of salt, what you see out there, and not compare yourself. So if we're talking about priorities, there's lots of things you could do. There's people who say like, I need to work on everything, I'm a mess. That means you've got no priorities. So What are your priorities? So, and there's nothing harder to learn. You've got to, on the simplest sense, if you just listed out, say, 5 or 6 areas that are key to you in your life and ranked them out of 10, whichever one is the lowest, start with that one. Like, start with that today. Because there's no point in saying, I'm going to focus on my business when, say, like your health is a 1. Because
that's so important. Yes,
your business. Or there's no point really focusing on your health if you're like in really good shape and you're number 9 or 10 out of 10, and then you don't see your friends or family because you've dropped the ball in that area, that's a 1 for you. Or your finances, you've got no money and you're continuing to just go down the gym for 10 hours a day because you want to get to 11 in physical fitness, but you ultimately you're going to be unhappy and unfulfilled if you can't survive, can't eat food, can't have somewhere to live. So this is the important thing, and where to start at ground zero is to just be ruthless with yourself, and this is not to keep up appearances with other people. This is a personal thing. The reality, where are you least satisfied in your life right now, and that is your priority, to work on that for the next 7 days and then go from there. That's the important thing to do. In terms of process, I touched on a very simple process there, but have your own set of agreements, agreements to simplify life. So once you've identified this is the mission you're going on, or this is something you want to achieve, this is the way you want your life and lifestyle to go, then what are you willing to do and not willing to do to get there? That's just as important, not what you're not willing to sacrifice. You mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk. He didn't have a Saturday off for like 14 years straight. And he's aware of that. So he's got the awareness part. He knows he's willing to sacrifice that to, own the New York Jets or whatever it is he wants to do. Yeah. But in the same sense, I know I'm not willing to work Saturdays for 14 years or, for any years particularly, because I have my family, and that's a priority for me to carve out that time as a priority for me. And there's no right or wrong, but that's just something that I would not be willing to sacrifice. So that is really important in terms of your process. And then perspective, just a little touch on that in terms of, like we said about the hero's journey, the world is what it is. It's not necessarily good or bad, but it's your own perspective that you bring to it. So the world you could say is perfect as it is. And then, if you are in extreme adversity at the moment, or you're just coming out of it, you're just going into it, because we will have that potentially, and when you're through it, and you will get through it so long as you don't tag out in terms of suicide, and male suicide is a big problem. You will get back. Is that adversity exactly what you needed to become the man or the woman that you are now, to get that mental strength and what you need if you looked at your life as a whole? Because you cannot avoid tragedy, and adversity is coming. So it's about having that perspective that it will pass, and you got to stick with it. And it's not as easy as it's said, and that perspective is where the pitfall of that is depression, obviously, which I've experienced, and fear as well, in that fear of failure and fear of success. And that's the kind of like the number one destructive emotion is definitely fear.
Yes, Adam, there's so much gold in here, and I want to dive into purpose a little bit later when we also talk about, I believe the greatest quote of all time. But what you said about priorities is super interesting. Like this idea that you've got to take the bottlenecks and focus on those sometimes, right? Because like you say, like if your happiness or your health or your relationships, if they're so far down, then it doesn't matter. Like you don't need to focus on this stuff up here. You need to get this at least to a normal degree.
Yeah. I'm not saying you
can actually live a normal life, right?
But priorities, it's like anything. You say your weakest link in a team or something like that. If you're looking at strength and conditioning, and you're like, I'm going to do some more bicep curls, but you're struggling to move around because your back hurts because your core is so weak. But then you're continuing to like work your upper body because you're already strong there, but you want to get even bigger. But then you can't even function because your weak link, you've been skipping like doing any core work because you're not that bothered. Maybe you're low body fat and it looks good, but it doesn't do its job, and you're in pain because it's such a weakness. So it's underpinning everything. It's like that in many areas of our life where, they're all connected, and it may not be a priority to be like very high achieving in that one area. But if you've dropped it so bad that you're so unsatisfied with it and it really is not working, it's a genuine weakness, it is going to hold back other areas that are, what you see as a priority for you.
Yeah, that's such an important point, right? That even if you only care about one area of your life, right? Even if you want to max out just your business, the way to do that is you also have to take care of everything else, right? Because there's like this loss in effectiveness even, right? And productivity and focus when you don't take care of your health and you don't take care of your mental and physical well-being and your relationships and all that, then even, if all you care about is making money in a business, which hopefully it isn't, but even if that was the case, you would still lose out on productivity. And I think that's why this is such an important point. And, I also love what he's saying here about the process then, right? About really getting clear, like, what am I willing to sacrifice? Because I think that's a question that's not enough talked about, right? Like, it's easy to say, oh, I want to be in top shape, I want to be super happy, but are you actually willing to do that work?
And also, a lot of people are like, yeah, you've got to do anything. I'm willing to do anything. Well, are you really?
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be, because there's obviously going to be a lot of opportunities and shady people out there, and by doing anything and everything, you are going to massively sacrifice the gold, probably the areas that truly, when you're looking back on your life, that you worked out that they are the important areas, and maybe you were focusing potentially too much on certain things.
Yes, and that's so important, right? And also, so on the one hand, like you're saying, there's this possibility to do too much, right? To overdo it, to sacrifice too much.
Yeah, the hustle.
And on the other hand, yeah, exactly, it's this hustle mindset, right? But I think where most people struggle actually is the opposite, right? It's like they're not willing to sacrifice enough, right? They say,
oh yeah,
they set these huge goals, right? They're like, oh my gosh, I want to lose 50 pounds, I want to, run this marathon, whatever. But then if you look at their actual daily life and their daily routines and habits, there's just a total mismatch between the goals and the reality of what they're practicing. And I think that's such an important point, that if you want to become great at something, you better become great today. You act great today. You train great today, because that is the only way, so that in weeks and months and years, eventually you become great.
Yeah, you touched it there. A lot of people say, oh, when I achieve this thing, then I will then I'll be great, and then I'll do these things. They're like, well, why do you get up at 10 a.m. if you're going to be doing all this cool stuff? Oh, but yeah. When I've got that Academy Award, when I've got that 10 grand a month,
then I'll start hustling.
Yeah, and they're like, okay, it doesn't work like that. If you just pick someone who's got all these things that you perceive that you definitely want, that's going to make you happy. And then if you find out what their schedule looks like, what they're actually doing in the day, that's what you need to be doing, because you have to be, like you said, and do these things before you get these, what are basically little external rewards. And if you really hate the process of doing these things and on a daily basis of being that, whatever it takes for your desired choice, then you're going to be unhappy. Whether someone gives you an award, or whether your book's a bestseller, or whether you got a top ranked podcast, you're going to be unhappy if you don't enjoy the day-to-day activity.
Yes, and what you just said is such an important point, right? That even if the end goal seems exciting to you, but the process to getting there is actually miserable, right? It doesn't excite you, then most likely it's the wrong goal.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that obviously there's stuff that we've all got to do where you think, actually, that's not ideal, but you can see, because your goal is so important to you, and it's aspects of it. But if you were talking say Olympians, or if we're talking years, and there's a huge proportion of what you're doing is you're making you miserable, you really got to question that goal. Because we talk about doing, if you're stepping into your area of genius, or at least you're committing to work to mastery in that field, then yes, there's hard work involved, but you should be loving many aspects of it. So talking like this, I don't see this as work in the slightest.
No.
I love to write. I love to speak. And so doing TEDx talks, and then helping people discover not just, that they're, or have more confidence to back themselves and to achieve the strategies to achieve these goals. But then I help people as well with their TEDx talks. So, really just the insight of, stripping away what is their core idea worth sharing amongst all the awesome things they're up to, or their message. And then it's just that, really stripping away, and just, I love the fact that in the simplest sense, you can't read the label of your own bottle. I just got off a call with someone who's interested in it. Well, they're actually going to work with me now, in terms of they wanted an idea clarity call about their idea. And this is, a really accomplished person. And in their own words, they've done quite a lot of speaking, but they weren't able to land a TEDx talk. And the ideas they told me, the message was awesome, but as a TEDx talk, it was not original, and it was not good. But that's no disrespect to them. Their message was, but as a TEDx, it needed a few tweaks that, again, you don't know if you don't know. And also, she's got so many ways that this can be brilliant, and it was just a tweak. And the feedback was she hadn't thought about it like that, and she kind of seen, okay, I can see how this works, and really excited to crack on with it. But so that, and technically that was work for me in theory. But that is awesome, and obviously it takes years to get to these spots, and it's about noticing areas in your life where you light up and you get excited about it, and you're like, whoa, that didn't feel like work, but technically it was. When that happens, if that's like 10% of your day, how can that become more of your day? Or how come if 80% of your day is stuff that anyone could do and you're not really into it, and well, how about you just phase that out? So obviously there's nitty gritty of certain things. I'm sure at some stage all of us could get to the stage where all these little minor things, or a lot of them, you could outsource aspects of them. And I've had virtual assistants, but they were more, my experiences, what I was doing, they were more hassle than they were worth. So coming back to the number one thing, I actually enjoyed aspects I was trying to outsource. So I was like, well, what am I doing? But it was because, people would tell you, oh, you should outsource this. And maybe you should, but if you're enjoying it, maybe you shouldn't. So
yeah, that's such an important point. Just 2 days ago, I think I was talking to Dr. Gay Hendricks, one of the leading, transformational coaches. And he has this concept of your zone of genius, right? That zone that actually lights you up on fire. And
I know exactly what you're talking about, because I interviewed him, and I'm just entering a certain phase. This is what he was telling me, because I think it's 40 plus. You really need to work on your creative zone, because otherwise you're going to age very prematurely.
Yes, it's amazing, right? He's been on top of the game for like 45 years now or so, right? It's amazing. And so like his whole take is like, you've got to love the stuff that you're doing, right? And maximize that time that you spend every day. So even if it's 10 minutes at the start, right? Like try to make it more and more, make it 20 and then an hour and 2 hours and 3 hours, because that's what makes you come alive. And I think that is such an important point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now I want to dive into like, and we're talking about this, by the way, for our listeners offline before the conversation, that I believe the greatest quote of all time. I have it hanging here, right here in my room. You, Adam, are going to get it in your gym, like this huge board. So for our listeners, I mean, I'm going to put it in the show notes, but I just want to read it real quickly and talk about it, because I think it's such a powerful idea on really how to get the most out of life. So Theodore Roosevelt, former United States president, once said, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or what a doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who actually strives to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least failed while daring greatly. So his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat."
Love it.
Yes. So talk to me about the importance of stepping into the arena of our lives.
Yeah. And I love quotes. And that was like the first one that I was like, there's a good chance that may go in my book. And it didn't. But just because it is such a popular quote, and it's, so it's like anything. It's not necessarily overused, but it's so well known. Yeah. So it's about, that's the only reason you go in book. So I absolutely love it. So in terms of the arena, but much we was talking about it today. Today we're both, we're actively in our arena. We're out there. We're not competing. We're participating, I should say, but we are competing at life.
Co-working.
Yeah, we're turning up at it. So you create your arena. Your environment, not just your physical environment, but also or more importantly, your mental environment. So in terms of, people say, your physical environment, you may be you may be what you would seem as stuck, and you can't do this, you can't do that. But it comes down to, say you're at work or something like that, and every lunch break you're going into the staff room or the office, or you sit down and this is the only place you can have your lunch in theory. You're going to argue to me that you can't go anywhere else. So you sit down around a bunch of women, dudes, whoever they are, who then sit down for their daily whine, complain, just and then you sit there. Let's say you're not participating. You sit there and you don't actively get away from it. And what I mean by that is, if that is your lunch, apart from not enjoying lunch, that takes up a huge piece of your week, your life. And that is that constant negative drip, drip, drip. And it's gross. And also, what's to stop you putting your headphones in and listening to an audiobook, a positive podcast, whatever, taking a book in there and just listen to music and then like reading while that's a huge opportunity. So I think, you've got to take responsibility for all of these things and not just and not just put it on other people that, I can't do this because, they whine every day. I don't like it, but I'm involved, or I've got to join in because they're my colleagues, whatever it is. So, your personal code and philosophy, as we talked about before, and your agreements will go a long way in creating your environment, and people, like we just spoke about, will put a lot of time and effort into telling you why they can't do something, likely why you can't do something. And they will always be up for listeners if you're willing to listen. So I think it's important, as I said, taking ownership for this, and every day, just look at it as your own training ground for you, for life, for whatever it is you're pursuing or looking to work out what you're going to pursue. I like to try and set up my environment as a training ground. So again, what do training grounds have? If let's say you're in the worst environment ever, well, then you're in the Rocky scenario. You're in you're in Luke Skywalker in his little mud hut. You only get stronger by overcoming adversity. So that's your training ground. Look at it as these people who are whining in your face every day. It's your training ground to become like a very stoic and mentally strong person, to just like brush it off, just block it out. So that would be my thoughts initially on that. And I know we can dig into it quite a bit.
Yeah, what I love about this is like this process of doing hard things, right? Of doing things that are uncomfortable, doing things that go oftentimes even against societal norms, right? Things that are considered weird oftentimes or eccentric. Those are oftentimes the very things that actually help you grow, and actually, as a byproduct of that, help you live a happy life. And that's something that I always try to emphasize here is like, doing those hard things, doing those difficult things, going against the, normal and average is actually something not just going to lead to success in life, but it also is going to make you happy.
Yeah, 100%. And loads of people can have their own version. This applies to your own life, whether you're, in this specific phase or you used to be or whatever. So in 2013, I was still teaching part-time at a college in Croydon, near Croydon in London, England. And I was part-time at that stage. My background, I was a teacher for 10 years. I was, so my current environment did not dictate where I saw myself or where I was going to end up. So you don't have to let it to you. There's plenty of people could take a different perspective and think, I've invested, all these years at school, done a degree, done teacher training, then done NQT year, then spent, many years teaching. I was very good at it. And then, well, that's it. I could, I had a comfy job. I could roll out. A lot of people in my department were, 20 years older than me. And I could see the path, and there was nothing wrong with that. But you got to make the decision. Is that it? Is that what you want to do? And if it is, brilliant. Double down, be the most legendary teacher you can, and go down that. And obviously, I've questioned that, and I know I would have been reasonably happy doing that. But also, I had this. I got ants in my pants. I wanted to try new things, and I wanted to. I didn't see myself as an old teacher in that environment, because especially for a sports teacher as I was, as you got older or more responsibility, you wore shorts and t-shirt less and less, and you wore suits more and more, and the collar around my neck with a tie, for me that is weddings, funerals, and job interviews, and yes. I just don't feel comfortable. And that I could see that was the writing on the wall for success in that arena. Success meant I was going to go up the line, and I was going to have more and more meetings, and I can't stand meetings for meetings' sake. Yes. And that was the final nail in the coffin for me in that arena. But I decided, to co-author a book, nothing to do with sports particularly, The New Rules of Success, in a different arena. So I started baby steps, co-authored a book. I launched a podcast off the back of that, and I quit my job with two kids with no... Wow. I had ideas, but no real safety net. So I started moving into that arena. And the thing that attracted me to podcasts as well, I knew my environment was headed, I planned to move to America. And not just America, the middle of nowhere, the wilderness up on the Great Lakes. So that's where I am now. And I knew any work I did that wasn't non-location based would be pointless for when I'm in the middle of nowhere. So then I had a pure, a very clear agreement with myself and, a goal that I would work as if I was in the middle of nowhere. So that made it very clear. If I have this opportunity, can I do it in Northern Michigan? No. Okay, I'm not doing it. Can I do it in Northern Michigan? Yes. Okay, I'm doing it. Kind of thing. That's just one filter. And so then I was doing the hard yards before I moved here. So the transition was smoother. And the podcast, we talked about creating your mental environment. I interviewed people who I wanted to talk to, and I wanted to ask them specifically about all and everything, questions that were interesting to me. That was the first point of call. And then obviously that really opened some doors, as well as, my own personal education. And that's created my peers, a lot of some really good friends that I physically stayed with in their houses all over the place. Wow. Have come from. I can trace it back to the podcast in some way, shape or form. So that's creating your own environment. Now the world is a very small place with, technology. So even if you're in the middle of nowhere, if you're in like the butthole of nowhere, if you're in like a dump, if you've got an internet access, you can create your mental environment. So there's no excuse.
Yes, so powerful. And so this idea that you just mentioned, you're a professor and you look 20 years sort of into the future to see like what would my life look like. I love that, right? Because it essentially gives you this idea of like where you're gonna end up. If there's this quote, I'm probably gonna butcher it, but it's like, if you don't change your path, you might, end up where you're going actually, right? It's like, so you realize in that moment, like, hey, 20 years, that's exactly where I'll be. And like, I don't want to be this guy in the tie and suit and all that stuff, right? So talk to me about this process of envisioning the future. You said, you had that dream, you knew you wanted to change something. How can people, create a different, vision for their lives? I know you had to do this before, after your athletic career, and that, like, how do you create a new vision almost out of, nothing, with no sort of, knowledge of what exactly I want to do?
Yeah. So there's two ways to go about this, kind of the two sides of a coin. I could go completely more of a morbid way about this.
Yes, I love that actually.
So we got two key ways I would do that personally, that spring to mind anyway. So I'm very into my stoicism. There's a definite stoic kind of underbelly or theme through Awaken Your Alpha, and especially the book. And one of the processes and I think Tim Ferriss talks about it in his TEDx talk, or similar process, the premeditation of
death?
No, premeditation of evils. I don't know why I'm having a brain fart. Yeah, premeditation of evils. So in terms of that, all of the simplest sense, it just means kind of not focusing on it too much, but in a very structured, it's that awareness. If you did this all the time, you'd be miserable. But this is right. Okay. I'm going to be aware of what is the worst thing that can happen. What is the worst case scenario? It's ultimately that, but people get stuck in that. There's a difference between always thinking about the worst case scenario, because that means you'll be a pessimist, and that means, you're not going to do anything because you're always focused on the worst case scenario. But I put it in the book. I have lots of actions in there. So I kind of modified that to the premeditation of evils quadrant. So you split your page into 4 halves, or 4 quarters, I should say. And again, without looking at this, I should get it roughly right. So, so you talk about, so really getting scientific about it. So we're isolating this to maybe an hour or something like that, or even like 10 minutes, depending on what you got available. So if you've got a decision of something you could do, so let's just say, taking on this new job or launching that business. So it's actually thinking, well, a lot of people are not going to do that because of fear. So the issue is, okay, right, what is the worst thing that could happen? So put in like in the one section, so what's the worst thing that can happen? Okay, what is the best thing that could happen? And then obviously, what is a percentage? Then you're gonna get a bit more scientific than just worrying about stuff. What is the percentage chance of that bad thing happening? So it may be, okay, I could die. That's probably one of the worst things. So let's say if you was doing a bungee jump or something like that, which you've done. Okay, realistic. Okay, what's the percentage chance of that happening? If you could say, okay, I could die, and for some people that's enough, I'm not going to do it. But I would then go, okay, realistically, look at this. Okay, how many people have died doing a bungee? And you could even go, how many people have died doing this specific bungee? If there's like no one, you could say, I know 1% chance I'd die. So, okay, you think, well, I'm okay with that. So, and then okay, what's the chance of something positive, at least positive happening? What's the chance of this, the most positive outcome that you've identified happening? And if you look at it and say, well, actually, there's probably about a 60% chance this most positive outcome is going to happen. Like, I'm going to love it. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to feel empowered. Okay, so you think, well, actually, there's probably a good reason to do this. Or then even, what's the chances of something even remotely positive happening out of it? So it may not be your ideal scenario, but let's say, you feel empowered if we're talking about bungee jump, or, if we're talking about a new job, you do it for a year, you improve yourself professionally, and then you've got some more options. That's maybe not your ideal scenario, but that is a positive as you've classed it. So then if you do this premeditation of evil's quadrant for key decisions, if you're sitting on the fence, instead of just like umming and ahhing and just being indecisive, because that will kill you, that is just the worst. I hate that for myself and anyone I know. This will help you identify, is this something you're going to do or not? Good. Either way, that's good. Not doing it could be good. Or doing it could be good. And then you move on. So that's one aspect in terms of, legacy and making decisions for your life as well, small and big. And then in terms of kind of more the purpose and, really trying to find things, the Japanese concept of ikigai, which is literally translated as a reason for being or reason to live or worth. I know there's some worths, one of the words in there. So reason gives your life worth. And basically that's, again, there's almost like a Venn diagram that you can play around with, which literally, what you love would be one circle, what the world needs, what you're good at, and what you can be paid for. So if you've got something or aspects of your life that cover all of them, literally, so they're all overlapping, then that would be, in the Japanese concept, ikigai. For me, it'd be like in your alpha zone or the A zone, or you're just going to be loving it. Okay. So, and when you've got, say you've got 2 or 3, so let's say you've got, you're doing what you love and you're good at, but you can't really be paid for it and the world doesn't really need it. You're focusing on your passion. But then that becomes, if you can turn it into something you can be paid for, that becomes profession. And then if you can, if the world needs it and you can be paid for it, but you're not that good at it or you don't love it, it's just a vocation. What you love and what the world needs, that's a mission. Now, if you can get to these overlap and so you're on your mission, it's your passion, you're professional at it, and you absolutely love it, that's your kind of the hot spot. And you can play around with this, and you don't all have to have it from one aspect of your life. They're all connected. You could have a job that you're highly paid at or highly paid for, and you're highly skilled at. And then, okay, so you're paid for it, you're very good at it, it's your profession. Okay, so does that mean you have to quit your job? No, because it might mean outside of that job that's so awesome that gives you financial freedom, you have some non-profit, or you have a hobby that you love and the world needs it, and that's your mission. And then it's also your passion because you're good at it. So you can, you make up your own individual mix for your life, because it doesn't all have to be from one aspect. So I think that's important. So this ikigai concept applies to, retired people, semi-retired people, students, workers, business owners. It applies to all and anyone. And it's fun to play around with that, because if you play around with that and see, oh man, I'm having a shocker, is this my life? Good. That's going to give you a slap around the face to make some tweaks and changes and maybe take up a hobby or quit your job or start a business. Or on the other side, you might look at it and think, oh, I thought I was doing quite well. I can see, if I just added this one thing to my mix, I would really be in my ikigai. And that would kind of just really put that cherry on the top of everything I'm doing.
Adam, I absolutely love that. And it speaks to this awareness again, right? Of really becoming clear on like, how do I want to live my life? Because one of the challenges I see, especially, all the students and stuff at this point, is like, they're so focused only on that passion, right? It's like, I love to do this, right? But they forget all the other aspects of like, am I actually great at it? Or am I willing to do the work to become great at it? And also, does the world need it? Like, is anyone going to pay me for, playing video games? Chances are probably not, depending on what you do.
You might.
You never know. You might be. You might be.
I tell my boys, that is a job. But also,
it is a job, yes. But
I know someone who was a video game tester, so they loved it. The reality was they're working long hours. I'm not sure they love that so much, and they weren't actually paid that well for it. On the flip side, I know someone who's a professional gamer, and oh my goodness, they travel around, they're playing games, they're getting paid big bucks, and I'm like, that is awesome.
Yes,
But
yes.
also to get to that level even, I'd take their life now, but I also know I would not take the steps it takes to get there, because I am not going to sit in a room for 8 hours a day playing that. Even if I know, which it wouldn't be a guarantee, that that's going to happen, because the sacrifice for me, it doesn't fit with my lifestyle. It doesn't fit with my, my mindset, my physicality of how I am. It doesn't float my boat. The end, I could travel around playing computer games for a few hours,
Yeah.
but I know the steps to get there, and I'm, happy to know that I'm not willing to sacrifice that. But, so there's some exciting opportunities out there, definitely.
Yeah, no, and this awareness again, right? Of like, really, how do I want to live my life, right? Am I willing to first have the end goal, but then also am I willing to go through that process, right?
Yeah.
And I want to go back for just a second to what you said before, really defining our fears, defining the worst possible outcomes, right? Like quadrant. Because I actually did this, I used this, actually put it into practice. So one of the fears, of me getting into this field was like, hey, what if I go broke, right? And so what I did was I sort of took the whole concept to another level. Instead of just visualizing it, I literally just took a yoga mat, right? Like one of those really thin yoga mats. I put it on the floor, and for 2 months, I was sleeping like on the floor, basically, right? And man, my back was hurting, man. It was painful. I slept like horribly.
Yeah,
but what I realized,
I hope you ate really poor food that week as well.
Literally, I also did that. Like, starved myself almost. Like, it was a whole thing. And what I realized is like, even if I go broke, I lose my family, I lose my friends, no one in the world likes me, and I have to sleep under a bridge, I will be fine. And there's such a power and such a beauty in realizing that even if your worst fears, no matter how unrealistic it is, even if they, came into this world, even if it happened, you're still going to be okay. And you're still going to find a way to get out of that. Now, Adam, we talked about a lot of great strategies, tips today. If you could give our listeners just one challenge to take away from this conversation, to take it home and, awaken the alpha, what would that be?
Okay, depending on what time you're listening to this, I want you to ask yourself the question, what could you do to make today great? And it's important, this question, not what would you like to do, what can you actually do? Because some idiot out there or some muppet will be like, oh, go to Disneyland would make my day great. Well, you might be able to do that today, but also this is the sort of person who's always suggesting or focusing on things that they can't physically do at that time, so then they can whine about it and just ultimately make themselves feel sad. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, by the end of the day, sometimes it's more, if you've had a really tough day, this is an even more valuable question, because it might get to like 8 o'clock at night and you're like, oh, what a day. And then you're like, okay, this is where I am. It's 8 o'clock. I've had a crappy day. What can I do so I can genuinely say today, like make today great from this point? And so the answer to that is very individual, depending on what resources you've got, depending on who you want to reach. So for example, it could be as simple as, I'm going to go walk around the block. And you think, well, how's that great? Well, then that probably wouldn't be on your list. I'm going to walk around the block, and maybe I'm going to call an old friend that I've been meaning to call for like 3 months, a year, whatever it is. And I'm going to just check in, see how they're doing. So, speak to someone I love, or tell them I love them, or something completely different. But I'm telling you, if you do that and actually physically do what it is from that point that you could make that day great, then if you can go to sleep and know, I had a good day today, or I had a great day today, I should say, then once you do that regularly, great days, then you had a great week overall, then you had a great month, and then, it's ultimately a great life. So it's these little moments that are important, and that, that's all we've got. And, try it. Just try it for 7 days, and you will have some conversation. I just focusing on, because that's that's quite a go-to for me, of just reaching out. A lot of people don't take the time, but reaching out and just calling someone because you want to deep down. If you take the time, because it's a good thing to do, you enjoy it, you'll get something out of it, they'll get something out of it, and it will help make your day great. So yeah, that would be my challenge to you. But and also, please do reach out to me and let me know if you've done any of the stuff we talked about on this show. Adam Lewis Walker on Instagram is always I'm very active on there, in the Instagram stories as well, but across all social media. And if you are interested in an idea or just a clarity call with me, whether it's regards to, mindset, what we were speaking about, or if you specifically want to amplify your mission and your message in a TEDx talk, I do idea clarity calls for that. And I love hearing these ideas. So you can go to talkaccelerator.com. There's also a podcast there. You can get loads of free resources and insights. And then also jump on a phone with me and I can, point you in the right direction in terms of your idea and how to best pitch that to TEDx organizers. And I love to do that.
Perfect. You literally stole that question from me. Now, real quickly, I know you have to go. Final question. What is your quest for greatness?
Whew. All and everything we just said. So my quest for greatness is to help others, again, in terms of what drives me and how I help others, I should say, to amplify their mission and their message. So in terms of like the mindset we spoke about, generally everyone listening to this needs to back yourself more. It's very rare, and I'm in America, so I know we do get some Americans who are very self-confident, but generally all of us behind, and the reality is we don't back ourselves enough, and how can we expect others to? So my mission is to help everyone amplify their mission. So back yourself and your message. So if you've got something you want to share and put out there, don't hold back. Don't do it, in little on a low level. Things like, writing a book, being on podcasts as a guest, or having your own podcast, or delivering that TEDx talk will amplify your mission and your message. So that's really my area of genius and what I love to do, because it always comes back to, when I speak to people, the number one thing holding you back is yourself. And so I really think you need to back yourself more and do some of the processes we spoke on today.
Yeah, Adam Lewis Walker, thanks so much for coming on the show. All right, guys, that's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you gained some valuable ideas, tips, tools, tricks, mindsets, belief systems that will hopefully inspire you to take your life to the next level. At the end of the day, guys, it's all about application. The only thing that's going to set you apart tomorrow from where you are today is how much action you take with those ideas that you gained. And so I really want to challenge you at this point to, not just listen to this passively, to not just consume this, passively, just thinking about other things, but to really take those lessons, take those ideas that you just gained and start applying them to your lives, to really start taking action and sprinting towards those goals and those dreams that you have in your life. Now, guys, at this point, I want to ask you for a huge favor. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider heading over to iTunes and leaving a review, as that helps me really grow the show and reach more people, impact even more people around the world. If you have a family member, a friend, a loved one maybe, that you think could benefit from this content, please consider, sharing it with them, forwarding to them, as that helps us really build a community of like-minded people that are all about maxing out their lives. Now, guys, with that being said, thanks so much for tuning in today. I really, really appreciate it. Stay strong and see you tomorrow.